see here. And then apparently this is you and I after the flight. You said this happened right after the flight.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
This is me and my dad, and I've got the biggest head. Back then I was vain. We're playing with the ball in the pool after the flight. What is the longest your dad has been in the air in a glider? What's the longest duration?
Well, probably that day that we have the pictures of there, that we were flying over the Sun Valley area, and I was from takeoff to landing was over 7 hours that day. So you can get pretty tired up there flying and bouncing around and fighting the thermals and fighting the lift on one wing and the down on the left, and it's fun and challenging and lovely. I mean, it's just a great feeling.
I apparently have.
Yeah, just to mention the name of the mountain range there, that's the Hindeman Peak area near Sun Valley, and you can probably spot that on most any topographical map. And those peaks there were somewhere in the vicinity of plus 14,000 feet and more. And of course I was up around 17, 18. I think you can see my altimeter. I know I was around, when I put my wing in the cloud up there one time, I know that the altimeter was about 18,000. And I can see the altimeter right now. This is about 16.5 where this particular picture is taking, because you can see the little hand is pointing near the 6, and then the bigger hand is up near just to the left of it. And the altimeter is up, showing a positive climb rate here of close to 1,000 feet. If I can read the instrument, it's a little bit blurry because I'm focused on the distance.
I have a picture of the bar graph, but I'm trying to find it.
Oh, yeah, the bar graph tells the story. Those are really interesting things. A lot of times, particularly if you're going for a personal record or something, you'll carry an instrument with you called a bar graph, and it will clock your altitude from the time you take off until you're flying up here at cloud base at 18,000 feet or whatever it might be on the day you're flying. And it'll show each thermal as kind of a bump in the line.
There you are.
Yeah, there I am in PB.
And is that 7165?
7165, N7165.
And this is the Diamant?
This is the Diamant. And
are you soloing here?
Well, you can only there's only room for one person.
Yeah, there's only room for one.
So you have to have a bit of training before you take on an airplane like that. But it was a joy to fly. And it had close to a 50-to-1 glide ratio, which means for every foot of altitude you can glide 50 feet approximately horizontally, and there are many variables that can affect that. But
this is in Caldwell.
Yeah.
Roger Frank and George Allen.
Yeah, Dr. George Allen, who is an avid glider, his airplane was a Phoebus, and we kidded him sometimes about the plane name, but it was a wonderful glider, very similar to mine, a little more bulbous in front and probably a little more comfortable cockpit than mine. But George was a doctor, still is, and a very good glider pilot.
Apparently this photo was taken by your friend Noel.
Yeah, my friend
Noel Hells, who just happened to be driving by the airport on that Saturday, and you didn't even know the picture was being taken until a month or two later.
Yeah, true story. And the guy with his back to us in the yellow shirt, his name is Roger Frank, and he is a fabulous glider pilot. I was with him on one flight he took out of Minden, Nevada, which is up in northern Nevada near the Sierras. He took off in the morning, and 502 miles later he returned to that airport. During that time, he flew down to Southern California along the Sierra Range, flying a lot of thermals, oftentimes at 18 to 21,000 feet. And he's kind of my glider hero. Lived right there in the Caldwell area, and he's an A&E pilot, or not a A&E mechanic. In other words, an aircraft mechanic by profession. And he did my annuals on my Cessna 182 and my 172 both. He was a very good mechanic, but he was an even better glider pilot, and he took some amazing flight, one of which was a 502-mile out and return to the same airport. And he spent a lot of that time in Southern California and worked his way back up the Sierras, back up to land. It was a long flight and a tiring flight, but what an accomplishment.
Trying to get to the rest of the photos. There's an entire album, but apparently we've changed the password a few times. I'll have to work on that. But
yeah, I think I still have that hat I'm wearing in the cockpit there of this picture, and I'm wearing a jumpsuit that John, your mother, made for me because it had lots of extra pockets in it, so I could hold charts and other things I needed at close hand when I was flying the glider. And of course, that's the typical short brim hat that a lot of glider pilots wear, and the sunglasses. And you can see how long the canopy is there, and it does not cover your feet. Your feet are kind of in the sun, which is great because a lot of gliders with a different design have a smaller window glass like that, and your feet are in the shade, and when you get flying up at the altitude you fly in glider sometimes, it gets cold on your feet. And Roger's flight, the one I was telling you about, he was out and back. That's the guy with the yellow shirt.
See how it says right there, there's a little bit of red.
Okay. Roger Frank is his name, A&E aircraft mechanic. But anyway, he flew the out and returned, and his main complaint about the whole flight was he had cold feet because he was up at 18, 20,000 feet most of the day.
That's crazy. There's a question for you. When he did flights, did he take off and land same airport each time, or did he go to land at other airports?
His hope was to return to the same airport he took off from, which was Minden, Nevada. And if you want to look that up on a map, it's in northern Nevada, near the California border. Well, not real near, but anyway, he did fly out and return for a total of 502 miles that day. And he landed back at the same airport from which he took off. And he released at somewhere around 7,500 feet, 8,000 feet altitude, and spent most of the day up around 18, 20,000 feet. Very cold up there, and you need oxygen, of course. But he did turn the nose to the south, and he flew down to Southern California along the Sierra Range, and returned back to that same airport the same day, averaging over 100 miles an hour. Rarely turning in the glider because he was in what they call ridge lift that came off the Sierras. But there was also another type of lift that the name for some reason isn't coming to right now, but it's a lift that's very choppy, and he flew in that rotor of the choppy lift a lot of the day, which made it kind of uncomfortable, I'm sure, for him. But he made it 502 miles out and returned back to Minden, Nevada, in northern Nevada, near the Sierra Range.
That's crazy. Wow. You did 4 flights today in the L-23. Nice. They're just talking. It's expensive to land out. Yeah, far away from where you need to. There was no Uber or Lyft.
And well, actually, it's usually not. Usually, you have a ground crew.
Yeah.
that you can call on to. You can land in a cow's pasture. In this case, my friend Roger, he couldn't land at the airport. He got back to it, but he couldn't land there because it had clouded over. The cloud level lowered from around 7,000 foot altitude down to around 5,000 foot, and that was the altitude of the runway. But from the ground we could keep an eye on him somewhat and guide him to the airport, and we did that, and he landed safe.
Hey, Brad. Yeah, Brad. My friend Brad M says hello to John Dad. They're calling you John Dad.
Hey, Brad.
Okay, here we got some clouds. Oh yeah, that's some serious. Oh, I gotta put my gear up. Can you fly IFR in a glider? If with an IFR rating? Or is that even allowed?
Well,
I'm gonna get lower.
You need a transponder. Transponders
take a lot of power.
Yeah, they eat a lot of power.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, they use a lot of power, and so you don't want to have one of those in your glider. All the instruments you see in this simulation are all battery operated because you have nothing else. You don't have an engine running to run a generator.
Unless this has a little motor with some fuel in the back. That's where your RPM. See, I have an RPM gauge here.
That's not likely.
There
are aircraft that have a prop that folds up behind the cockpit.
Right there is I got a power lever for something, but I don't know what it is. Oh, and it's you got a charge. That's interesting.
They might be assuming you have a power glider in which you have a outside of the canopy behind the canopy. The two doors will open up and you can swing up a propeller and a little mast that holds it in place.
Right, I'm going to go back to Kavik.
And you can actually self-launch with one of those. They're very expensive, I might add. The motors are, I'm talking now.
Yeah.
The motor drive.
Let's see, clear. Okay. Resume fly, plugins, SkyMax Pro. Yeah, we're totally in the clouds now. Let's go up here. Plugins, admin. Let's just disable this for the moment. There we go. All right, let's go down, fly to the city, and then we'll call it a day on this. Oh, that's beautiful. Where is the city? Where did the city go? Is it behind us? Wow.
Yeah, there it is. It's behind you right there.
That's not. I'm looking for the big city. That must be further south of us.
It has the airport, huh?
Yeah. All right, so let's look at the map.
Most roads there will be wide enough, but if there's big trees near you when you land, you got trouble.
All right, watch this. We're gonna fast forward. Those lights.
Oh yeah, we dimmed the lights, didn't we? That helped.
Okay, we're right over the city.
Yes, you are.
Oh, it's loading in some photo. All right, there we go. We're gonna turn around and go toward downtown. I'm going to change my altitude also to... We'll go to 3,500. There we go. And we're 3,500 over SeaTac, Seattle Internet, Tacoma International.
What's the elevation of the airport?
Sea level.
Oh, you're still way too high.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily going to land right here, but I was going to try to glide to downtown. Oh, I have speed brakes out still. Yeah, you're right. There we go. The question is, can I get to downtown from this altitude? I gotta better hit some thermals. Which if I'm Kavik, there are no
where
thermals.
Downtown is on the map.
Right there, straight ahead of us. The skyscraper's right there in the distance.
Oh, you can easily fly there.
I'm gonna try to go.
And you'll have plenty of altitude to fly a regular pattern.
Yeah, there's overcast, so I can't do that. Manually configured.
Well, it depends on what the overcast is. If it's
Yeah.
you're at sea level, the airport's at sea level essentially.
Yeah. This is a glider, right, girl? Yeah. Yep. There's no propeller. Look at it.
It's almost identical to my glider, except for the more bulbous nature and the more upright nature of the cockpit. You can see the pilot in there setting up pretty normally.
Yeah, where you were like really laid
I
back.
was really reclined in mine because it had a very shallow fuselage and the canopy was over 6 feet long. So it was laying down was pretty comfortable, and it was a nice in a lot of glider conditions. But I think I'd prefer this more normal chair setting and a little bigger around front, and that's essentially what the glider world has evolved to, is what this particular glider looks like.
Yeah.
This is almost identical to what they call a Cirrus glider, CIRRUS, which is a fantastic glider and more of a modern design than my Diamant 16.5 was. You can look up pictures of both of them on the internet, by the way, and Diamant is spelled D-I-A-M-A-N-T.
I thought it was M-O-N-T. Is it A-N-T? Okay.
No, it's A-N-T.
All right, put you on the spot. You're in the seat. You're in the hot seat.
No.
Just for a second. You don't have to land. Just. Yeah? Okay. Next time.
Next time.
One more landing here. And then we'll. You gotta try the glider sometime. There's a plane going in. Alaska 178 is on final for Seattle.
Is that real time?
That's real. It's within it. If you looked on the map from the real world, yeah, he's basically he's landing. It's probably off by maybe 20-30 seconds, but
Yeah, it's good you have realistic traffic to deal with.
and normally you'd never dive. Oh, he just went to.
And I have had to change my whole landing plans when a commercial airliner, a small one, a double engine, twin engine, that was landing at Sun Valley Haley Airport, Haley, Idaho. And he didn't care if I was landing or not, and I didn't have a motor. It didn't seem to bother him when I was landing my glider, and I ended up landing upwind and was so distracted that I forgot to put my landing gear down. And it made an ugly, ugly scar on the bottom of my beautiful fiberglass airplane, which we soon after repaired, but it was rather embarrassing. And what was worst of all is when that twin engine
I better land this. You're down.
when that twin engine commercial airline, although it was a small plane, they taxied up to me and then taxied around me while I was still sitting on the ground in the middle of the runway, because, of course, I had landed with my gear up and scratched an ugly scar on the bottom of my beautiful sailplane. And, in fact, had smoke come up inside the cockpit as a result.
Wow. Because of the friction.
And I was sitting there while this other commercial plane that had distracted
This
me
thing won't settle.
taxied around me, and the pilot looked down at me, couldn't figure out what I was doing, and and then my buddy showed up, and we put the gear
There is
down
no
and
throttle.
taxied off.
There is no throttle to it. Oh,
Oh no!
Woo, we're down. There is definitely an art. There's definitely some skill with landing, especially with no wind. I mean, I have no wind here.
And I noticed you went right through that
And we
runway
had to get out of
sign.
the way of this Alaska.
Yeah, and you did that. Well, I've never seen a glider backed up before. Beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Any last words?
Fun to be here, guys. Thanks for joining us.
A little reminiscing, good times. That's where my aviation love stems from, is my dad introducing me to it back in the day. And then thank you for the flight simulator back in 1986.
Yeah. How about thanking for the
ball?
For the swimming in.
Thank you for the ball.
I think that's at Lagoon in northern Utah.
Is that Lagoon?
I think so.
Could be.
It might be
I
Sun
thought
Valley.
it was Sun Valley.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, it's probably Sun Valley.
All right, see you guys. I was looking earlier. See you, Brad. Great stories. Yeah, good times. Thanks, Iowa. They're calling you Pap Fly now. That's awesome. Your dad also got you into aviation. Yeah. All right, dogs. See you, Jay.